Welcome, Hannah. Thank you so much for being a part of the platform. I think the information that you're going to give today is going to be so valuable for any teachers or parents that are listening. So even if you want to just introduce yourself and a little bit around your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was delighted to be part of this because I love your platform. So it's great to be somebody else who can share a little bit of information. So I'm Hannah and I'm a speech and language therapist. I founded early language years, which I like to call Ellie, but probably doesn't really come out as Ellie. It's more Eli, but in my mind, I call it Ellie. Um, and it's just an early language year platform for speech and language development. So again, it's very much what it says on the tin, dealing with that birth to school going age and helping and supporting parents with language and communication development, very much through everyday activities. So of course, I have children who I see for one-to-one therapy that we would be working on, difficulties and impairments. But the whole focus of early language years was also just for the everyday child and the everyday parent who just wants a few tips and a few tricks and different techniques that they can incorporate into their daily routines and their play. So that's what I'm trying to focus on at the moment. I provide some workshops to parents. I work with preschool teachers. And then, like I said, I do one-to-one sessions with children who just need that little extra bump in either the language part of communication or the speech part.
Lovely. Yeah. And I know that like when I saw your Instagram page and your website and everything, it's really aligned with, I suppose, the platform in general, trying to give those like practical tips and strategies. And I know we were chatting a little bit before there around, sometimes parents can feel a little bit fear mongered if they're like
Yeah,
too much information or
yeah,
they should be doing this. Whereas when, like you were saying, you can kind of give them a guide and empower them that
yeah,
these are actually really fun ways that you can do in your daily routine. And like
yeah.
as OTs, I'm always trying to say there is no point if you're going to go, right, I have to set that time aside every day now to
No,
develop their OT or the speech. Whereas if you can build it into the routine, there's way
exactly.
more longevity. Then it actually
Exactly.
lasts. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's so true. And even especially in those early years, I mean, you don't need to sit down and do tabletop tasks with little kids. Everything you can do is through mealtime, through changing, through
Mm,
bath time, through playtime. There's so much kind of stimulation that you can give through that. And instead of kind of, okay, my child should be doing this at a certain age, it's just about how you can get your child moving through the levels, moving through the communication progression. That's really what I'm focused on, not on this is where your child needs to be at. Every child is very different. I think these developmental norms are changing every year. There's new research coming out and norms change. So I'm very less focused on that and more just focused on here's tips, they're all evidence-based, they work. It's what clinicians do use when they see little people and work with parents, but you can also use them at home, through kind of supported approach, you're able to use these at home too. So I really value that. And I like that that's kind of the ethos of what I'm working with at the moment. It's like, it's just supporting you to support your kids as opposed to intervening to get them to a certain stage. That's kind of less the focus.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And obviously, that relationship between the parent and the child is so important, especially
Absolutely.
for communication, because you're
Yeah.
communicating with them all day. And like, I actually do agree with you what you're saying, because sometimes when we look at motor norms, motor milestones are nearly easier to kind of quantify, but
Yeah.
communication is, there's so many different factors, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like motivation
Absolutely.
and,
Complete.
environment and all the
Yes.
kind of factors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's more around kind of empowering where that child is at that stage.
Exactly.
And like I think that leads in a little bit. You have some fabulous ebooks. So and
Oh
I
God.
will attach them as well. And in case any
Oh, thank
parents
you.
listening are like, I would love to have like a few strategies. Do you want to tell me a little bit or any of the listeners
Yeah, of
about them?
course. Well, thank you very much. So I do. I guess my baby, my big ebook is my what I call Ellie. So early language years, a parent's guide to speech and language development. And basically, I have just divided every age and stage of language development into different chapters, and at different ages, what you can be doing. So whether you want to get to a certain stage or bridge gaps or just whatever's appropriate for their own little cognitive development at that time, what's appropriate activities to use. And I give different tips, I give advice, techniques. There's a few kind of bits what I like to refer to as Ellie's approach, and basically it talks about different topics. So it might be Ellie's approach to developing listening skills, or Ellie's approach to playtime, Ellie's approach to initiate or improving eye contact or whatever it is. I just have little different Ellie's approaches. So it's broken down into these really easy chapters, lovely kind of table format that you can just kind of scan and read, and nothing that's too, I guess, daunting or intimidating, because a lot of the advice that there's so much advice out there, first of all, and a lot of it is reams, and you're looking through books or you're looking through blog posts, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I try to make it as accessible as I can. I start literally at birth, so what you can be doing from birth, or what children are capable of, because it's amazing. Babies are born with an innate capacity to learn language. They can start from the very beginning. So if you have these little techniques in mind, just as you're pottering around the house or going for your walk or doing your bath time, you can start using them, and there's a lot of research out there to say that that's what helps their literacy proficiency when it comes to school going age. So it's just focuses on the birth to school going age, so 4 or 5 years, and then at the end of that ebook I have a little kind of how-to chapter. So if you're a mom or dad and you're looking to reduce screen time a little bit, it's kind of how to reduce screen time. Or if you're looking to incorporate more ideas into play, how to do that. So it's kind of just to pick a book for your child's age. And again, just tips, tricks. It's not meant to be there to kind of your child should be at. It's more, we can help bridge gaps. These are the tips and tricks, and evidence-based as well. So again, what I would use with little kiddies in an early intervention session, a lot I have put into that book. I guess the important thing is, of course, it's not a therapy program. So, if parents are concerned about their child, I by no means think that it's a book and you follow this guide and they will end up getting to the developmental appropriate norm. That's not kind of, what it's made for. It's just made maybe either as an adjunct to therapy, if they're in therapy, or just for a typically developing child who parents want to do a few extra techniques at home and learn a little bit more about the language learning process, because I'm biased, but I think it's very interesting. So
it's fascinating.
yeah.
And like you
Yeah.
said,
So
I do think, especially nowadays, Hannah, that if parents, like just the general parent, really, if they can get those strategies, because there is definitely less kind of chatting going on, maybe even at the dinner table, or doing things a lot of times, straight on the phone or the iPad, like you were saying. I love that how-to section, because that is a barrier to communication, isn't it? And getting those conversations going, and and kids sitting at the table with adults, even those simple kind of
Exactly. And people are busy in their own lives, and that's completely, understandable as well. But it's just about, actually you're probably doing this, but what you could even do it to augment it that little bit more, or, just these small little few minutes throughout the day that are part of your routines. You're doing them anyway, but if you start mapping a little bit of language stimulation techniques onto it, you're making a huge, change and development for your child's language development. So yeah, it's I don't know. I hope people enjoy it, but it's great, and I'm really kind of proud of it, and I hope it's a good guide.
Oh no, it's excellent. I'm going to attach them, because I think we were chatting a little bit around that as well, and that it is important sometimes, maybe not so much information is actually being passed down that is quality information. So there's so much information online that your child should be doing this, but it's very focused on kind of the problem, rather than here's some solutions. If you're finding that your child isn't at this level yet and they're at the level before, how to kind of develop those skills.
Exactly. Bridging that gap, getting them from A to B, not, kind of panicking, worrying, oh my goodness, they're not at B, we're still at A, and what am I supposed to do? Or, it's just about, actually, there are things that you can do, things you can do at home. And I think a lot of parents, when parents kind of come to therapy with me, they're surprised at oh God, I've got these toys in my house, I do these kind of things, this is what I can do. They're surprised that is what happens to communication development. That's how it develops. It's all through these play and these routines, and through reading and singing, and and you are so likely doing that at home. But if you add that little extra layer where there's just maybe a small technique or a small activity that you can add on to, you're making the world of difference then. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And what about, do you have any strategies for parents around, like you were saying, how to develop language around those daily routines? So the things that people are doing on a general basis, like you said, parents are busy.
Yes.
What are kind of some of those techniques maybe they could use?
Yeah, of course. So a lot of the techniques are super simple. So they're nothing that's, you're going to have to, like I said, sit down, do a tabletop task and say, okay, we need to do some reading, some writing, some, or flashcards, none of that kind of stuff. That's no problem if that's an approach that you want to take, and that can help too. But really, it's about talking to your child. So children learn language through, hearing ambient language. So they have to be able to kind of hear it, listen for it. Then it's a kind of tricky process, because then they have to kind of recognize the language, remember the language, and then they have to repeat it. So the more you chat to your child, the more opportunity they have to learn new words, to learn what things mean, because they're listening to it and they're stimulated by it. So the one thing that I kind of call, and I think it's the most important technique, and it's the whole just say what you see technique, or being a commentator almost, and you're just talking about things. So when you see something out the window, you're pointing to it and you're saying, oh, birdie, the big birdie, or what, something that you see, or even like a mum's having a cup of tea or bath time, like anything at all. It's just talking about, because so often we're busy and we're doing routines, and all of a sudden child's in the bath and we're just doing things and we're kind of on autopilot. And we might not be having that face-to-face interaction. We might not be having that chat with them. And by just saying really simple things, if you say bath time, and then all of a sudden you say that every single time that child's getting into water, all of a sudden it's going to be like, I hear bath time every time that we come here and the taps go on. And, so it's all about just commentating, or being, saying what you see, basically. And the technical term for it is kind of self-talk or parallel talk. So you talk about what you're doing, or you talk about what your little kid is doing. So it's like, oh, you're running fast, or you're playing with your cars, or, put the tap on or tap off, and too hot, or whatever it is, so you're just talking around what's happening during the day. Sometimes it can be, pretty annoying for your partner, because all of a sudden you're doing a lot of talking, but it's not to be incorporated for 24 hours a day, but it is something that really helps. I remember I had a mom not so long ago, and she was like, Hannah, I'm going to kill you, because I was in Tesco and I was like, strawberries, apples. She's like, my child wasn't even with me. I was just doing it because I'm so used to doing it. So sometimes it can really get in the head a little bit, but it's a really, really good technique for helping to develop language. And then other things is just always keeping your language very simple. So just use simple phrases. We don't need to say, oh, mummy and daddy, we're going for a drive in the car and we're going to go to the shop. We're going to see granddad. If you're just saying we're going to granddad's, that's all we need to know at a certain age. Of course, as they get to kind of the more toddler years, you can start adding on words, and, you're using those little bit longer sentences, but keeping your language really simple. When a baby is kind of at that one word phase, so maybe where they just have a word on its own, they might say, duh for dog, or they might say something. Keep it at a one word phase. You don't need to say, oh yeah, there's the dog. You can just say, oh, dog. You can just repeat back after them. So there are really simple strategies. Again, I know I said you don't need to sit down and read, but reading is a great one. So if you're just doing your bedtime stories, it's great. You can just point to pictures instead. So instead of reading the text, even just pointing, oh, there's the man and the green tree, and just describing, using different vocabulary so that they're exposed to it. Other things to do kind of for developing language, you can sing nursery rhymes. They're great. And that melodic intonation kids love. And it actually resembles what we call this infant directed speech. An infant directed speech is like basically an intonation that we use in our voice, and certain speech patterns that we use that children really kind of cling onto, and they really are attractive to this, and it's what helps develop speech. And so in infant directed speech, if you think about talking to a little person, we tend to say, hello, how are you? And we go up and down, and we've got this nice pitch and variation, and we repeat words. We very much kind of make reference to the here and now. Oh, you're a great little girl, or, oh, there's the doggy, or love your shoes. We're talking about things in the moment. So again, nursery rhymes are a little bit like that in terms of just the melodic intonation and the repetition of words and sounds. And that's really brilliant for developing language as well. Another thing is just like offering choices. Again, sometimes we're giving our little people their dinner, and it's just there, and that's their sippy cup, and that's whatever it is. But maybe offering a little choice, kind of, do we want the green cup or the blue cup, or even leaving a step out, giving them something and not giving them the spoon. So they're kind of wondering, where's my spoon? I'm supposed to eat with a spoon. And that creates an opportunity for them to communicate, whether it's looking at mom or dad, that's a communication intention, whether it's, going, where is it? Or it's, whether it's saying no, whatever it is, giving them an opportunity to actually communicate themselves. Because we're just so used to doing everything which is, that's okay too. But we're just so used to doing everything. Kiddies don't need to initiate sometimes anymore. They don't need to ask for things. They know, their clothes are put on them. They're changed when they, are dirty. They're fed when it's mealtime. They're put down to play when it's playtime. So there's kind of less initiation there. So if you can offer choices, it can be great. I'm not saying your child is going to verbally respond to you and pick one, but they might point, they might make eye contact. It depends at the stage that they're at. So there's so many different techniques that you can use.
Actually, so when you're going through all those techniques there, Hannah, they're so appropriate as well to children who have delayed communication skills.
Completely. And it's everything that we do with them in the clinic. Yeah,
exactly. As you said, like for older kids even who don't have that verbal communication ability yet, might be gesturing. Sometimes what can happen is we kind of preempt, oh, well, that's what they're looking for, but giving those opportunities to have voice, to request, like you said, doing that commentary, all of those so helpful. And like you said, it's you meet your child at their level and then you build from there. So if they're at one word level, you're at one word level to help them understand. And I know in particular as Irish people, oh, look at the ball, it's red, look at it, the amount of language, and so fast for children.
Just overwhelming.
I'd say they're absolutely. Like, what is the word they're trying to get me to say? What? Red ball. So really kind of pulling it back a little bit so that you're meeting them at that level, and like it all links in. Because when you were saying even there that commenting and looking at those cues, as OTs, we would say that forward and back dance around that co-regulation piece of reading behavioral cues and responding to it. Oh, look upset, what's wrong, and those little responses, that's so important for a child to later be able to self-regulate. So
absolutely
all combined.
Exactly. And giving the time as well. When I say about, commentating and doing the whole say what you see and talking around things, it's really important as well to like pause as well, to also stop talking. So giving your child opportunity to take it in, to respond with, whether it's a verbalization, a look, whatever it is, to respond with something, a behavior, an action, and pausing and just giving them that time as well is so important. And then all of a sudden you're in this active turn taking then as well, which is the whole foundation for human communication and what we do every day. It's all about the turn taking. So if you can do the whole turn taking with your child, you saying something, giving them an opportunity to respond. And again, I'm not saying your child's going to start talking in sentences, but it's whether, it could be a behavior, a small vocalization, looking at something, pointing to something, a gesture. So it's, there's so much there that you can do, and all within your daily routines. It's nothing that you need to really set aside time for. Of course, if you feel that there's something that you want to work on, or, I guess setting aside time for reading is actually important, because that's, a lovely bedtime activity. It's a lovely ritual. Exactly. And it's something that most parents are doing anyway. And just knowing that reading is so fantastic for language development. And again, it's not just about the text. You can do anything. You can, it's all about turning the pages. You can take it in turns, again mimicking that whole active turn taking, getting them ready for that conversation and that they're going to be having in years to come. So it's just there's so many simple ways that you can go about it, and I think the whole thing is keep it simple. It's not about
and exactly as you were saying, that turn taking will come later on, but there's all those foundational skills that need to be built initially. Like you were saying, turn taking. And I think communication sometimes is really misunderstood, isn't it? That sometimes people think communication, oh yeah, like speaking, is that what you mean? And it's like, well, no, like, exactly as you said.
Not. There's so much that lies there. Exactly. And that has to be apparent before communication. I mean, like, a child needs to be able to attend to something and pay attention to, and they need to be able to play, and there's so many other skills they need to do. And communication is pretty, I mean, it's very varied, but the whole speech part is absolutely at the top of this kind of triangle that we talk about. I mean, much more further down is what we want to work on is the foundation skills for learning language. And that's all your attention. And then you're looking at your play, and then you're looking at trying to understand words. Well, before you say a word, you need to understand words. They say that a child needs to hear a word 500 times in context before they'll actually understand it. So, I mean, all of a sudden people are like, oh, my child's not saying anything, but they could be understanding a whole lot, and we're looking for them to understand. That's really important. So just taking things in, knowing what shoes mean, knowing what blow kiss means, knowing where's mama, dada, that's really, really important. And if they're doing well with that, then they've got really good foundation for and then expressing themselves and actually using then the speech sounds for the whole speech part. So it's very much, communication. We do talk about a lot of, mums and dads come to me, my child's not saying anything. They don't say anything. And then they're not even sure when I say, well, would they understand like shoes? They'd be like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know. So, and they're so pleasantly surprised a lot of the time that they do. They have these great understanding skills. And when they don't, it's like, okay, we need to pare this back a little bit. We're looking a little bit, below this, and we're going to look at a few other things, and we're going to look at play, and we're going to look at just different processing skills. So yeah, there's a lot to it, a lot of layers.
There is a lot to it, exactly. And I suppose sometimes it can be missed now a little bit, I think, for parents, the importance of play. Like, I think in the past it was seen as, oh, well, sure, isn't that a lovely thing you can do in your free time, not realizing the importance of play to small children.
Yes.
It is actually the way they learn. It is how they take in information, how they figure out their sense of self, everything, their motor skills.
Yeah.
Are there techniques that parents could use during play opportunities, especially, I suppose, for parents whose children have maybe special interests in play, and how you can kind of expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, play, it's so lovely to be able to have that opportunity to play with your child. And it's lovely to just get involved in the engagement. There's so much opportunity for turn taking, for laughing, for just enjoying yourselves. So again, using the whole say what you see technique. So if you're playing with your truck or your car, you're labeling, you might just do your car. If they're at the one word level, you might do red car or car crash or whatever it is if you're at that 2-word level. So the whole labeling, modeling words for them. I try and keep questions, to a minimum. I know sometimes a lot of the time we can be like, oh, what's that? Or what does the donkey say? And where does that go? And, we can ask, and that can be really demanding for children, even if it's during playtime, they can still feel that demand. So I kind of like the whole 3-to-1 ratio. So if you're going to ask a question, do kind of 3 comments. So kind of talk about, car crash, and car goes up or whatever it is. And then kind of talk about, where's the car gone if you hide it? Or, then adding the question in, but just making sure that it's not all these questions and this demand to try and answer, because it can be, that can be tricky for a little person. That demand capacity model can start kicking in, and they don't have the capacity to keep up with all those questions. The other thing during play, again, is just keeping it simple. You don't need to start doing these huge instructions, or we have to play in a certain way. Follow their lead. If they don't want to use the doll in the dollhouse, or if they don't want, if they want the car to fly instead of roll, that's okay. Follow their lead. You can map the language onto that. So, the car's flying or baby's sleeping, whatever it is, let them do what they want to do. They might not want to build a tower of Lego. Instead, they might want to line it up, or they might want to, color code it or put it in a box or whatever. Again, great opportunity. You can just use language to map it on. So you can name your colors. You can start doing verbs. If they have, a teddy, you can start doing your Teddy's drinking, Teddy's jumping, Teddy's dancing. You can start really incorporating so much into your play, and just follow their lead so that they're interested. I mean, you and I, if we're in a conversation, we're more interested in what we want to talk about than something that's not interesting to us. If someone brings up a topic and we've no interest in it, I'm very quickly going to tune out. I'm not really going to be on the same level, and it's the same with children. If they're not interested, if mom and dad want to play in this certain way and I have no interest in putting that dolly to bed, or I have, what I want to do is I want to take the dolly's clothes off and put them back on, or I want Dolly to sit on the couch and I want, whatever it is, just follow that and make sure that you're really kind of in tune with what they want to do as well. Minimize distractions as well, during play. Turn the telly off, turn the radio off, maybe, just so you can have that nice one-to-one with them, that they're listening, they're not kind of overlooking and kind of seeing, oh, Peppa Pig is doing, because they might want to start watching that instead. And you want to make sure that you have more opportunity for play, because much more language opportunity for learning it in play than there is in Peppa Pig and, in some TV shows. So it's important to kind of minimize those distractions as well. Play dates are great. So if you have, another mum or dad, and they have a similar age child, all of a sudden there's new environments, there's new toys, there's new ways of playing. They can start mimicking each other's behavior. It's really, really good. They start getting into playing together. They go, obviously there's lots of different stages of play, and they don't play together until they're literally about 3.5. But you can, having the play dates, they might play alongside each other, or they might kind of start looking and learning new behaviors and being able to mimic. Because everything, if you think about everything we learn, it's through imitation. So we see, when a monkey see, monkey does. That's how we learn. So if they see, how people are playing with new toys, how just all this new environment is amazing. So play dates are really, really great. And then I would also maybe choose like a word of the day when you're playing. So again, if you decide, okay, they're really, really interested and they're playing with something over there and it's the kitchen, just using, that word kitchen for as much as you can. It's like, oh, there's Ella's kitchen. So that's an actual, is that a baby brand, Ella's kitchen? Anyway, or there's, Brian's kitchen and the pizza's in the kitchen. Oh, come here to the kitchen. Like using kitchen a lot, using that word, picking the word, repeating. Because like I said, if a child needs to hear it so many times to understand and produce it, you repeating is not in vain. It's never too many times. That's where the stimulation does actually come in. And just always give that praise, lots of positivity when they do something, lots of, clapping hands and well done. And, as opposed to, if they start maybe throwing something, unless they're making a huge, huge mess, I just allow them do it and start mimicking their actions and trying to get into that play type with them, because that's what they want to do. And that's what you can map language onto. So yeah,
I love those. It's so true. When you were saying there, Hannah, about like making sure that for parents as well, is that they just go along with the flow, follow the child's lead, what they like. Because sometimes I think some parents might feel as comfortable playing, so they go in with a plan. We're gonna, this is what we're gonna play.
Jigsaw, or we're gonna, yeah.
I'm not really into this. So then they're going, well, they're not able to play with me. But it's actually, why don't you just follow their lead? See what you bring up those, maybe using some verbs if they love that crashing and crawling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many opportunities, like
there's so many opportunities. And even being down at eye level is important as well. Sometimes I think, don't be afraid, just get on the floor, and that's really where the really rich pet play happens then as well. So maybe by you sitting on the couch and them being on the floor, you're losing interaction a little bit because there's a bit of space, there's distance, you're not really getting involved, you're kind of sitting on the couch and you might have your phone out or something. Again, minimize the distractions for you as much as for your child, and get on that floor, get to eye level, let them see your interaction, your facial expressions, your gesture, and because the more they see, the more they learn about language as well.
And it's about that quality time, rather than I'll sit here, but I have to be on my phone for an hour. I've got 15 or 20 minutes that we can have like really fun play and I'm present. So I agree. That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great. So there's lots of techniques, and again, basic, easy, nothing that's complex there. Nothing's that it's like, okay, this is the pattern of language I need to use, and this is nothing like that. It's actually really just building on what you're probably likely doing, but just with maybe a few little different strategies, or adding something in, or maybe that distraction. Oh God, I was on my phone all yesterday trying to play with them. Just these little things, and making sure that there's just lots of language stimulation and lots of words being used that they can then begin to recognize and copy over time.
No, that's great strategies. And what about for like the kids, I suppose, Hannah, that have now developed some language?
Yes.
And so they are able to tell things. How can you expand the language more to be good at kind of telling stories? Because I know that's kind of a
Yeah.
big jump.
Yeah, it is a big jump.
Tell, yeah, but you tell
Yeah,
an actual story of like what happened. I know kids aren't actually great about telling parents what happened at preschool and
I
stuff, but
know.
to tell, retelling stories and stuff. Are there
Yeah.
strategies for parents around that?
Yeah, I mean, there are, again, you're bringing the whole, once you're kind of starting that language stimulation at home where you're doing a lot of chatting to your child, you're bringing that into the toddler and into the preschool years. So you're
Mm.
continuing to chat with them. You're using, you're, like you said, verbs, you're starting to add in adjectives, describing words, and hoping that they start then to do the same thing. So, what I would often do is if you are out with, if you have a 3, 4 year old, you're out with them, you've had a day with them, talking about it together afterwards, so that when they then are on their own and you want them to recall how was preschool or how was granny's when you're not there, they have that content and they have that vocabulary to be able to do it because they're used to talking about their day with you. So just talking about, oh, and yeah, didn't we see granddad today, and did we go shopping today, and we saw the apples and we put the apples in the trolley and the sun was shining and we saw a doggy on the way home. So just talking about your day together it is really important, and making sure you have those words, the big, the small, those describing words, so that they can start using them to scaffold their own stories. And again, sometimes I would say to, parents, if they're in preschool, it's not a bad idea maybe asking the teacher, well, what do they do today? Or, just every so often, because then you can help scaffold the
Mhm.
story they're telling. So if they're kind of like, don't know, and they don't really have anything to say, you can be like, well, did you paint? Or did you play chasing? Or did you watch a movie? So you can again offer that choice, prompt them, and kind of scaffold that conversation a little bit, so that they're not again put on the spot and trying to remember everything from the day. But if you are doing your conversations, if you're kind of recapping on your days in the evening, if you're doing that whole commentation, they're exposed to the right vocabulary and the right language that they need to start using. They might just be, a little bit reluctant, or maybe not, remembering it at the time. So again, just having a little bit of prior information so that you can start to scaffold it. And reading again is a great one. If they're reading, they're learning these new adjectives, these verbs, how to recall a story, how to talk in sentences. And they'll be able to start using that, by 3.5, they really should start recalling stories quite well from events that you weren't present at, and be able to let you know about them. And by using those simple strategies, you can help scaffold that as well.
No, they're really good. So, and I think as well, even for kids who maybe don't have as much language but are that little bit older, recalling the day even by using a social story or visuals to kind of help as well, like
Absolutely.
drawing it
Yeah.
out for them. What do we do?
Yes.
Because that also helps with
Oh,
their understanding of,
completely.
yeah, what actually did happen today,
Yeah.
and what were we doing?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and that really helps. I do think
Exactly.
that helps for most children. Why don't, and like you said, given that choice, that communication diary, especially for children who are struggling with their communication skills, is
Yes.
so important, because to them they mightn't see the relevance in, oh, I was painting. But then when you say, were you painting? Oh, I'd love to hear
Of
about
course.
that. It
Yeah.
kind of helps, because sometimes
Yeah.
people, I think, don't know what do you want to actually,
Yeah.
what's expected here from this conversation.
Exactly. And they don't think they've done anything half the time. If you say,
Yeah,
what did you do? They're like, nothing. They
yeah.
don't realize kind of those little parts that make up the day, and that's what you're trying to get at. Or even if they went out and they had to bring wellies, or if they had to bring a jacket that day, knowing that, okay, maybe they did a little bit of outside work, or, did you spend time outside? Where did you get your wellies dirty? And all of a sudden then they, it triggers something, and they're able to think about what they did, or they might then have some new language to talk about what they did. So yeah, I think scaffolding them as much as they need it, but
Yeah,
then allowing them to tell the story as well.
no, that's really
Yeah.
good. And actually, Hannah, I saw one of your posts, I have to bring it up, around what counts as a word during
Oh
the
yes.
week. I just thought it was so interesting, because I think as
Yeah.
an OT, because I work in that area of early intervention, I am always, I suppose, the point that I come in is often we're trying to get that engagement, to get those first
Mhm.
few words, those gestures, we're looking for that communication. But then I suppose I don't really think then about the words. Like, I know I want to like encourage them and how to encourage them, but I don't
Or
really know what actually counts as a word. So could you kind of
mhm.
elaborate on that a little bit, just for
Yeah.
parents that are listening, especially for parents who are hoping for those first few words in what they
Yeah.
think are the kind of first
Absolutely.
words? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, to be honest, with what actually does count with the word or as a word, because anything that is used consistently in a context for
Mm,
something can be counted as a word. So if I see mum and I just do every time I see
mm,
her, or I can wave or something like that, is a word that it doesn't have to be pronounced clearly. It doesn't have to be an absolute perfect approximation of the word as you and I would say it. It's what they perceive to be the word, and it's their approximation of the word. Again, any kind of sound that's used consistently in a context. Now, if they're just kind of babbling, so if they're having their day to day like a they're not words, because that's just kind of their own babbling and that's vocal play. But if they have it consistently in a context, it is a word. And then a gesture is counted as a word. So whether they wave, if they blow a kiss, if they give a thumbs up, that's also counted as a word. And sometimes I know mums and dads can incorporate baby signs. So they might say, oh, all done, or they might just incorporate something that's also a word, which is great. And then something what we call symbolic sounds. So that is basically when they have their trucks or their cars and they're doing their beep, beep, or vroom, vroom, or any of those woof, woof, they're all symbolic sounds, and
mm,
they're all counted as a word as well. And then if they have these kind of explanations, so if they're doing like wee as they're going down the
mm,
slide, or they're doing oh, that's all words again. So, and if they're saying something, if they learned off Dora the Explorer, if they learned hola or something, that of course is a word. I know it's a different language, but it's absolutely counted as a word.
mm,
Um, same if they have a little bit of Irish and they have like hota or whatever it is, that's absolutely a word. So
mm,
I think what parents are most surprised at when they all of a sudden they say, oh, they do animal sounds. Yeah, no, they say uh-oh, or they say wow. And they call granny gaga, whatever. I was like, that's all words. They are consistently used in a context and they are words. So I think a lot of the time you can be pleasantly surprised, and it doesn't have to be that full approximation pronounced exactly as it should be pronounced. It can be any attempt that they make for the word. And then what I would say, if they don't have that correct approximation, that don't maybe adapt it. So if they do call, a ball a ba, instead of adapting, say, oh, there's a ba, do say, oh, the ball,
yeah.
do say it back to them. Because I know we can get into that easy, it's cute, it's lovely, and we're like, yeah, the ba, and there's, that's what we end up saying, or maybe their blankie might be their baba or whatever it is. But instead of kind of doing that, do say, oh, your blanket or your blankie, or, the blankie is fine, doggy is fine, that kind of child talk is fine. But it's the more kind of saying back what they say. I know that I had a little boy and he used to call water caca. And then because mum was saying caca for probably about a year, it was absolutely caca for a long time. But as soon as then I was like, try just saying water back. And then, straight away he started then trying to approximate water, and it took a few weeks and he got there. So just approximate use the correct model back. But do count those words that you probably don't think are words, but they are.
And I think that would definitely be nice for parents to hear, that those gestures and
Mhm.
those sounds they do during
Yeah,
play and all those kind of things.
exactly.
Yes, so important to say back the word, because definitely I would think some parents, oh, that's so cute, and we'll keep
Yeah.
saying it back, and then the child just
Yeah.
thinks that's the word, like. But
Exactly. And then it just gets into a little bit more, it's a little more complex then if they're
yeah,
going to their peers in their creche or their daycare, or,
I
and they just
know.
have different words. So if they know the model and they hear it back, again, they're not going to say it straight away. And they're not parrots, so they're not, when I say to keep talking, never think that, but they're not saying it back. It's like, it takes time. It's okay that they're not saying it back. If they're continuously hearing it and they're exposed to it and it's within context and it makes sense to them, one day they will say it back. But it doesn't happen straight away. You very few children where you start pointing and you start saying something that they'll repeat back. I mean, very few children start doing that. It does take a little bit of time before that starts happening.
Thank you so much for all the
Yeah,
information.
of
And
course.
honestly, and like I think for like I'll attach obviously the links to your books and stuff, because parents may
Uh-huh.
actually be thinking, I would love to expand a little bit more and learn a bit about more. And I'll attach your Instagram
Yeah,
page as well.
thank you so
And
much.
obviously
Thank
if
you.
parents want to contact you or anything like that as
Yeah,
well. But
yeah,
I think
exactly.
Yeah, I think I love the ethos, even of the books around that kind of practical everyday strategies, but it is stuff that parents need to hear because like
Yeah,
sometimes, we
yeah,
don't hear it and we don't know. I learn new information the whole time. I've learned information
completely.
from you there. So I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
continuous learning, isn't it? And like you said, it's not
it is.
pressure, it's more informing.
No.
So they have that kind of
That's
support.
exactly it. That's the last thing we want to be doing is kind of pressurizing. And these are when we talk about ages and stages, yes, there are stages that children, are at certain ages, but it's okay. It's about bridging the gap between that as well, and it's not about if they're not there, this is absolutely terrible. We're talking about their support. So whether it's, reading the book, intervention, getting in touch with the speech and language therapist, having an assessment, like, all those things are what will bridge the gaps. And of course, there will be children with difficulties that these type of techniques don't work for, and that's okay, and that takes a different route of intervention. But I think the whole key is the early intervention and starting early. And if you feel in your gut that you need to talk to somebody, or you need to kind of get an assessment, do it, because even if it's just for peace of mind,
Yeah.
it's important to access the services that are there, because they're there to support, and not to fearmonger, not to put pressure, not to talk about milestones. And those things are not as important as what you can be doing as a mum and dad at home, or a granny or granddad, or whoever you are, what you can be doing at home to facilitate language development, because there's so much more, I think, than people think there is, and it's much easier than people probably think it is too.
Yeah, and I like you said there, even around early intervention. Early intervention actually starts at home with parents knowing how to develop the skills, because it's so much easier than for parents to say, you know what, we have been doing this, and there is
Yeah,
a delay there with speech. We now
yeah,
know it because we've been doing all
exactly.
these different things.
Yeah,
Same with OT. We have been doing tummy time. We have been doing things. They're
yeah,
still not crawling or walking.
yeah,
Then at least now we'll go
exactly.
this route, because now
Yeah,
we need a different approach to kind of
yeah.
reach those goals. So
And
yeah.
you're totally empowered by that, because all of a sudden you have the knowledge. And so that's great. And you're empowered about next steps, and what you need to do, and what kind of, where this needs to go, what the trajectory needs to be. So exactly, it's just knowing. Yeah, it does. It starts at home, and it's kind of knowing that, okay, yeah, actually we might have a problem here, and we need to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you, Hannah. I hope you have a lovely day over in
Yeah.
LA.